Louise tore her eyes away from the evil barrel of death and fixed them directly on the German's face. His eyes were cold, hard, and gray, just like the stone she imagined his heart to be. He spoke again, the words tumbling out in a harsh cascade. A look of sheer terror and panic distorted Rose Gidgeon Giles' features, and she shook her head violently, a single sound coming from her lips, but repeated over and over again. 9, 9, 9. At least that's what it sounded like to Louise. 9, 9, 9. The German's finger tensed on the trigger. Somehow now, her father's words seemed appropriate, and Louise launched herself across the meter or so of space that separated her from the gun. "Murdering bastards!" she screamed. "You murdering bastards!" The full impact of her small flying body was enough to send the German sprawling back into the wall. There was an explosion from his gun, and the bullet thudded harmlessly into the wall as he tumbled. Rose Gidgeon Giles was also quick to react, hurling herself on top of the German and wrenching the pistol from his hand. She hardly stopped to think what she was doing as she rolled him over and thrust the gun into the base of his neck. Louise watched, horrified, as she pulled the trigger. And again, and again. The 3 resounding bangs died away with ringing echoes. Without a sound, the uniformed man arched his head in the air, and then slumped his face lifelessly down to the stone floor, his hand still clutching the paper containing Miss Gidgeon Giles' message. She pulled it out and thrust it towards Louise. "Here, take it quickly and go. I'll take care of things here. I'll tell them someone was in here, and he got killed trying to help me." Louise reached out instinctively for the paper, but when she had taken it, she stood rooted to the spot. "Go on, get out," hissed Miss Gidgeon Giles. "They'll be here in a moment. Go, go!" Louise nodded and darted through the door, her mind numbed by the violence and horror of what she had just witnessed. This time, Jackson's warnings about waiting to see if anyone were on the other side completely dissolved in her haste for flight. She heard approaching voices and running feet as she dashed along the passage. A few yards along, a door stood ajar. As fast as her thin legs could take her, she scuttled over the red carpet and hurled herself through its inviting mouth. She pressed her back deep into the wall alongside the door and peered out beyond the gap. She lost count of the number of uniforms, which sped past towards the reading room and the laboratory. Several seconds after the noise subsided, she realized she'd been holding her breath and freed her tortured lungs with a rush of air. Panting, she looked around at the long dining table and its chairs and realized at once how lucky she was. If the room had been full of Germans eating their breakfast, well, it just didn't bear thinking about. She gently eased her head back around the door jamb. Considerable noise was coming from the laboratory, but everything seemed quiet in the other direction, the way she needed to go. Her chest heaved in protest at the thought of running again, but Louise knew she had to do it. She had to take the chance now that the route back to the window seat was clear. At any moment, the Germans could come thundering back into the corridor, looking for the mysterious intruder who had killed one of their colleagues. Louise ran down the passage, barely pausing to see if anyone was in the kitchen, and not breathing easily again until she climbed into the darkly inviting seat and pulled the lid down on top of her. She lay in the dust and cobwebs which had gathered there over the years, her breath now coming in violent, rough gasps. Outside her hiding place, she could hear raised voices and more running feet. A pinprick of light lanced into the darkness, telling her where the peephole was. As she pressed her eye to it, she saw Germans, dozens of Germans, running through the kitchen, their guns thrust out in front of them. They disappeared out of a door, and Louise heard the clamor of their shouting getting fainter outside. She turned to make her way down the passage and met with a wall of dense blackness. The torch, where had she left it? In her mind's eye, she tried to picture what had become of it. She knew she had had it with her when she dropped snugly into the gap alongside the filing cabinet, but she could not remember picking it up when she stepped out to greet Miss Gidgeon Giles. Blindly, she felt for the footholds carved in the rock, and began the long and unsteady climb down. Meanwhile, back in the laboratory, a German gave a triumphant shout as he bent to pick up the torch.